Welcome to AgriMinds, the podcast where we explore the intersections of personal growth and professional success in the ag industry. I'm Kacee, your host. Thank you for joining me as we dive in to the different strategies and insights that will help you level up your life and career. From mental health to leadership development, we're going to cover it all. So sit back and get ready to grow with AgriMinds. Hello and welcome to another episode of the AgriMinds Podcast. I'm your host, Kacee, and today I'm choosing to do things a little bit differently than we've done before. On every single episode so far, I've had a guest join me, and they have talked about their personal growth and their professional success journey, and all the different tools, insights, resources that they have used to get to where they are today. And something that I've mentioned in almost every single episode has been this tool called the Working Genius. And so today I thought we'd switch things up a little bit and I would dive into what exactly the Working Genius tool is, why I feel so passionate about it, and how you can utilize this information to not only help you at the office, on the farm, but at home as well. So in short, the Working Genius is an assessment that people can take to learn about themselves. There are a lot of assessments out there, such as Colors, Myers-Briggs, Strength Finders, Enneagram, all of these really great tools that help us understand ourselves better. What I like about the Working Genius is that it actually helps us do something with this information. So it doesn't just say, hey, here's all this info about yourself, really great stuff to have. It says, here's how you can apply this to your job, to your life at home, to you as any kind of human being that does any kind of process. And that could just be, how do I get anything accomplished, whether it's at the farm, whether it's at home? How do I plan the family vacation? How do I make decisions? Anything. The Working Genius is going to help you. And I host this workshop called Working Genius in Agriculture, where I take scenarios from the agriculture industry and apply them to these different pieces, and that it's something that's going to be applicable to those of us in ag. So the typical Working Genius tool can be used for anyone in any industry at any level in their career, any age, and I take it and apply it to ag. And so I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just walking through what the Working Genius is, and then kind of walk through all the different types of Working Geniuses, and then share a couple of examples on how you can apply that to your real life. So like I said, there's a lot of different tools out there that can help us understand ourselves as individuals better, but the Working Genius helps us figure out what we need to do with that information and why we feel the way that we feel. The Working Genius alongside some of those other assessments is gold. I love to be able to say, okay, I am an Enneagram 4. I know I have really intense and strong feelings. And sometimes that's not really understood on the farm, especially if you're working with people like my dad, who may or may not really want to discuss feelings. He wants to get the job done. And so now I can understand why he is driven the way that he's driven and why I am driven the way that I am driven, and can remove some of the guilt and expectation and self-judgment around that. So think of the Enneagram or DISC or any of those other personality assessments. Think of the Working Genius as 80% of something like that, but 20% as like a productivity tool. So there are 6 types of Working Genius that, if you essentially think of like 6 gears stacked next to each other, they all kind of like have their teeth intertwined with each other. And so like one has to crank for the other one to crank, and then it just kind of continues to move through there. So each of those 6 geniuses represent 6 steps or activities that are going to be involved in any type of work. So again, think of like 6 gears lined up next to each other. And in order for things to go smoothly, we have to do things in, a specific order, or things could get really messy. We could start grinding those gears, shearing bolts, and things just are really clunky, which essentially could be interpreted as burnout, miscommunication, unproductive task, things like that. There are 3 stages of work. Someone needs to ask the question and come up with an idea. That is what we call the ideation stage. And then we have someone who says, okay, that's a good idea, or that's not a good idea. And if it is a good idea, we're going to move forward and we're going to get everybody excited about this idea. If it's not a good idea, we're going to go back to the drawing board, back into the ideation stage. The stage where we're saying, yes, that's a good idea, or no, that's not a good idea, is what we call activation, meaning we took the idea and we're activating it. Then finally, that third stage of work is called implementation. That's where people say, I'm going to step in, I'm going to do the work, and then we're going to ensure that it gets done the way that we originally wanted it to get done. So that's the three stages, and each stage has two of those working geniuses. So ideation contains the genius of wonder and invention. The stage of activation consists of the geniuses discernment and galvanizing. And the third stage of implementation contains the geniuses of enablement and tenacity. So that was a lot of information. And I know that we're doing this via podcast, but I just want to make sure that, you guys understand that when I'm talking about the different types of work, it starts to click with you. And so here in just a second, I'm going to break down what each one of those geniuses are and the types of people in our lives that may have them. Now, again, this is not necessarily the type of work that you're good at, because for those of us in agriculture, we've had to get really good at things, whether we enjoyed it or not. The genius is determined based off of, does it bring you joy? Not, are you good at it? And maybe you're the type of person that you're like, I've never actually thought about what brings me joy. This is just the type of job I've done. And I've never really thought, like, is this filling my cup up, or is this just part of it? And so if you think about, say, for example, I used to love working ground on our farm. And to me, that felt like the best job ever, because I got to get in the tractor, set the auto steer, and just daydream forever. And I just thought that was the best thing ever. My sister, on the other hand, didn't really enjoy working ground. And I thought that was so strange. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, you're crazy. This is the best job on the farm. You don't have to do anything. You just get to daydream and space out and just be. Well, she hated it because she did not enjoy being in her thoughts, and she would much rather be doing something, like actually accomplishing something, getting something done, seeing a physical, tangible thing getting completed. And so when I think about, why I found joy in doing that task on the farm, it makes sense to me now that I know that one of my two geniuses is the genius of wonder. People with the genius of wonder love to speculate and ask questions like, why are things the way that they are? We love to sit and think. We love identifying the need for improvement or change and create a condition for invention to happen. So another scenario you could think of, like when you go to the beach for the family vacation, right? There are some people who want to sit on the beach, relax, do nothing. There are other people who have a list of every single tourist attraction, and they want to hit up as many of those tourist attractions as they can, and they cannot rest until they get every single thing on that list completed. I and other people with the genius of wonder are the people who have their butt in the sand and don't want to do anything. So if that helps you understand what the person with the genius of wonder could be like, that's what they are. As we move through the 6 types of working genius, the second one is invention. So remember those 6 gears that I talked to you about that were in a line horizontally? They spell out the word widget. So we're going to move through each of these letters. So right now we've just gone through W, which is wonder. Now we're going into I, which is invention. This is the second genius in the stage of work called ideation. Invention is that second gear where people are like, okay, we've asked the why question. Now somebody needs to come up with an idea. And to be honest with you, my husband and I, we used to get into a little bit of a pickle because we would struggle. He would come to me with all of these ideas and he'd be like, okay, here's how we can do this different. Here's how we can reorganize the garage. Here's a new business adventure, like just coming up with all these ideas. And I would kick in with my wonder, asking, well, why do you think this is a good idea? Or why should we do it that way? Or, like I would question him, and it would come across as I was either not excited about his idea, I was nagging, or maybe I was putting him down because I didn't think his ideas were good enough. And so the person with invention is someone who finds joy in just brainstorming and coming up with those ideas. And now that I know that, I know when to say, are you wanting my wonder to kick in? Do you want me to ask why? Or are you just like living in your genius and just brainstorming and you're not really ready for me to discern those ideas, which is my second genius, which is the third genius through the six. So discernment is someone who says, this is a good idea or it's not really a good idea. They have a natural like gut instinct and intuition to say, I can make this a little bit better. So that way all of the dots are connected. I can really assess the workability of it. We're really great at connecting those dots. And they're the person, again, that says no or go. So if it's a no, we can go back to the drawing board, back to invention. And if it's a go, then that's when it moves into the phase of galvanizing, which is the fourth genius in the six. We're in the activation stage. The person with discernment is saying, yep, it's good to go. We're going to activate. The person with galvanizing says, awesome, I'm going to go get everyone super pumped up about this. They generate enthusiasm. They get people excited. They rally the troops and get people motivated to get this job done. Where things need to move forward is saying, okay, maybe I'm a galvanizer, but I might not have the genius of enablement. That's where people who have the genius of enablement can kick in and say, I'm excited here. Let's do the work. They step in where they're seeing gaps. They are a critical part of the whole entire flow, because again, this is where stuff happens. So think of them as like providers or people who anticipate the need of others. They see when and where to step in. They're very people oriented and they know how to provide the right amount of momentum to get it going. And then the final stage of the workflow is tenacity. This is the very sixth genius, and they are the people who love to get things completed. When we were talking about the family vacation just a second ago, they're the person with the list that ensures they've seen everything. They crave checking stuff off of that list. Like they pour their heart and soul into completing things. They don't necessarily respond to like the emotional appeal of like what the galvanizer is like, building anticipation and momentum and excitement. They don't really respond to that. They really respond to the need to see the work through. So that was the 6 types of working genius. Those were the 3 phases of work. Every single one of us has 2 of those things that I've just mentioned that are a genius, meaning they fill our cups up. 2 of those geniuses drain our cups, which are called a frustration. And then 2 of those are kind of in the middle, and we can do them. We're somewhat good at them, but if we do too much of it, it's going to start to burn us out. And so, for example, my 2 geniuses are wonder and discernment. My 2 frustrations are enablement and tenacity. And my 2 competencies, which are kind of like in the middle of the road there, are invention and galvanizing. So that's what an assessment would look like if you took one of these assessments and we worked together on kind of debriefing what this assessment looks like. I would, walk you through what your 2 geniuses were, what your 2 competencies were, what your 2 frustrations were, and then I would help you apply them to your real life, whether that is, in your job, in your marriage, in your farming operation? Where do you fit? Things like that. And so what we'll do is we'll walk through an individual profile. I'll break it down, and then we'll discuss, things like, where is this resonating with you? How do you see these geniuses playing out in your work today? Where do you see your frustration showing up? Things like that. There's a lot of different scenarios that I could run through, which I do not have 100% of the time to do that today. But, some examples or suggestions that I would say are, once you know your working genius, you can then sandwich your tasks. So do a task that requires you to be in your genius, that fills your cup up. Do a task that drains you, that might be a frustration of yours, and then do another task that fills your cup back up. And you can kind of stagger those tasks that way. And you're like, okay, well, there's not really a way for me to do that in my job. How else can I do it? When you know, okay, this is a God-given talent of mine. These are geniuses. This is how I was built. It gives you a sense of relief, because it's like, oh, this is what I'm really good at. And that's okay that I'm not really great at these other things. And so you're kind of giving yourself the permission to not judge, or to not expect you to enjoy something, knowing that you were never meant to enjoy it. So those are the 6 types of working geniuses. This is a model, like I said, that I incorporate into my one-on-one coaching. I go really in depth with it. This is a very high level, lot of information in a very short amount of time. Kind of explanation of what the working genius is. There's another episode that I did with Laura Lencioni, who is actually Pat Lencioni's wife. Pat is the guy who developed the working genius model. And her and I talked through kind of how the model was, brought up, why it was needed, and, some other details about the working genius model. If this is something that sounds really interesting to you, I would encourage you to reach out to me. I would love to work with you. You can get the assessment online by just going to the workinggenius.com website. And I think it's $25 to take the assessment. It takes you 10-15 minutes. It'll generate a several page report for you that explains a lot of what I just explained, but in a, much simpler fashion. And so if that feels overwhelming to you and you want to just kind of go through it together and debrief it and say, okay, what do I do with this information? That's where I would come in and kind of walk through different things that you could change, based off of your knowledge around the working genius and how you can communicate that with other people. So thank you so much for your time today. I hope that this was beneficial for you. I hope that it gives you a little bit of an understanding as to why I mention this in every single episode, and can provide a little bit of context around this tool. And so moving forward in future episodes, you're like, oh yeah, I really see why she mentions the genius of X, Y, or Z. So thank you again for joining me, and I'll see you on the next episode of the AgriMinds Podcast.